Hello and welcome to the latest issue of Marlborough magazine. Happy 2005 everyone. I'm Dan Ginden. 2004 was a pretty good year for us, so we thought we'd bring you our annual year in review show for 2004. We had a pretty good year here at Marlborough magazine in 2004. We brought you a nice story about Jeff Long, who has now retired as the athletic director at Marlborough High School. We also brought you a terrific story on the library celebrating their 100th year in the Carnegie Building. And we also brought you a story on the history of Marlborough's sister city partnership with Akiruno, Japan. So our producers had a pretty difficult time at sitting down and figuring out which stories were our best of 2004. But with the help of senior producer Sophie Burke, we've put those together. And here they are, and we hope you like them.
According to the Marlborough Police Department, this was streets with 17 two-way The second highest total was the intersection of Bolton and Lincoln Street. Section with the most accidents at Department.
For not the vehicle will people that are making left turns across two lanes of traffic going into Dunkin' Donuts and CVS, instead of using the intersection up here to get into CVS. You have people probably trying to beat the light or making left turns without having the green arrow to make your left turn either way, into the plaza or into Curtis Ave. Now you see over here, there's no left turn when you're leaving CVS, so that you could go eastbound on East Main Street. But the people heading down East Main Street can take a left turn in here. And also, there's nothing saying they can't go across 4 lanes of traffic turning into 5 over here to go across the Dunkin' Donuts. Instead of going around the back of the CVS and out through the intersection over there, they choose to cut across 5 lanes of traffic, which is unsafe. And if they went around and used the traffic lights, then they get through the intersection safely and get to Dunkin' Donuts without having a problem.
The numbers do change. Through engineering and road improvements, some city intersections have drastically cut down the number of accidents that occur.
And see, what we used to have here before was a single left turn lane and a single straight lane. And in the morning, the traffic would back right up beyond the Royal Plaza driveway. Then people would be jockeying for position, and that would cause accidents. And because of the traffic improvement, now we've seen the accident rate go from 24 accidents at this intersection in a 2.5 to 3 year period to 5 accidents at this intersection. So that's a drastic reduction that's caused by engineering and road improvement. We're at Boston Post Road West, Hayes Memorial Drive, and Boundary Street intersections. In the previous 3-year study, we had 20 accidents at this intersection. With the road improvements and the addition of traffic lights, that has been knocked down to 2 accidents for approximately the same time period, the 2.5 to 3 years.
But all the road improvements in the world do not make a person a better driver. Rick Christie education for 33 years out there.
One of the situations we encounter is multi-lane situations. The student needs, number one, to slow down. If they reduce their speed somewhat, they'll have a better idea of how to execute the situation. They'll know they need to know what's in front of them, behind them, and beside them. And a lot of students and drivers, they don't like to look at what we call our blind spots. When you have multi-lanes, there could be somebody on your left side, or if you're in the left lane, there could be somebody in the right side. And when you know that lane is going to reduce into one lane, you need to know where these cars are so as not to try to race them into a situation. Sometimes if you back off on the speed a little bit more, maybe applying the brake, maybe just coasting a little bit, the car will come by you and you don't have a situation that way. A good rule of thumb, if the speed limit is 30 and you have average amount of traffic, if the speed limit is 30 miles an hour, if you just, before the intersection, ease off the gas, possibly cover the brake, not necessarily press on the pedal, but just cover the brake, the car will automatically slow down. So you're not going through the intersection at 30 miles an hour. You probably go through the intersection at 25 or 27. That makes a big difference. Again, it gives the individual a little bit more time to execute all the little situations that could possibly happen to them, whether it be other cars or pedestrians.
As Lieutenant Valancourt will tell you, the most important part of being a good driver is to be aware of what's around you.
Now, this is the unmarked police cruiser we've been riding in and people have been passing us in. There's blue lights here and blue lights here, and there's blue lights on the rear deck. And yet people have been passing us. And what that goes to the fact is that there's a lot of people driving that are not paying 100% attention to what they're doing when they're driving. And if they're passing a police cruiser, an unmarked police cruiser, and they're not noticing that, you can bet that they're not noticing other things which might cause them to get into an accident.
And finally, no one ever expects that they will be in an accident, but it can happen to the best of us, and when it does, it's good to know what to do.
If you're involved in a motor vehicle accident, you have a duty, by law, to make known your name, address, and registration number. For all practical purposes, you should at the very least exchange your information with the other driver from your driver's license and from your registration certificate, especially the insurance company information. Above all, you have to remain calm. If everybody is okay, there's no reason to get all excited about it and get into a road rage incident. It's only going to make things worse further down the road.
For Marlborough Magazine, I'm Sophie Burke.
Land of the free and the home of the brave.
It isn't every day that a group like this gets together at the Peter Rice homestead in Marlborough. This truly was a special occasion. On October 23rd, the Marlborough Historical Society paid tribute to one of their own. Francis M. Valianti was an advocate for all things historic in Marlborough.
We did it for several different reasons. Obviously because Frank had been a past president of our society for several years and was a lifetime member of the society and very active in its affairs. But I think perhaps even more importantly, Frank is representative of a Marlborough citizen who gave his whole life to his community.
My father had a unique relationship to history, which is why it often struck me as slightly ironic when I reflected upon the various positions he held here at the Marlborough Historical Society.
I've been telling them for so many years about what I thought of Frank. He was always there for us. He was always there for me.
These are some of the reasons why the Historical Society decided to dedicate the flagpole in his memory. It was also a poetic move because Frank Valianti was the erector of this pole.
He had it commissioned, designed, and erected. It's a replica of a colonial flagpole. That is, it's made from a solid tree trunk of cedar wood, and that's why it looks rough, and you see the bumps and gnarls on it. But also, it's representative of his great patriotism. All his life, I think, Frank was very patriotic. His military service, his activities in veterans organizations thereafter, his like for patriotic music. So once again, it represents more than just what he did, it represents who he was.
I was exceedingly proud of it, and I think he should be. You know, Frank was a myth buster, the myth being that Yankees get around together, join the Historical Society to celebrate their colonial heritage. Well, Frank was just as much of the Historical Society as any of the others, and he clearly was not of colonial heritage. He just goes to show that if you have a love in your heart and you want to preserve what you've got, you can dig in and do the deed as well as anyone else, and Frank did just that.
Frank Valianti fit many molds in his time. He was a happy man and a sharing man. As a father, he did his best to instill all the decency he had into his children.
My dad was essentially a walking civics lesson. And by that I mean that in all of his children he instilled the following motto, that no matter what comes in life, you have to do your part. And your part may be running for office, your part may be standing up at a meeting and saying your piece, but whatever that contribution that you feel you need to make to the betterment of your society, you need to do it. So my dad's living civics lesson, the embodiment of all that he was taught from youth, was exemplified by his work with the Marlborough Historical Society, teaching folks in this community what our collective past is and what our collective responsibilities to the future are.
Now this plaque will stand along with the flagpole as a reminder and symbol of the life of one of Marlborough's most caring and dedicated citizens. For Marlborough Magazine, I'm Dan Ginden.
Violence against women is a leading cause of injury for American women between the ages of 15 and 54. 1 out of every 6 American women have been the victims of an attempted rape or completed rape in their lifetime. And yet, women are poorly prepared to defend themselves.
I think as women, we're taught to be feminine, polite, you don't scream, you don't yell.
There's a majority of women out there that have never had to strike anybody, that have never had to make a fist.
But the Marlborough Police Department is looking to change that by holding self-defense classes for women based on the Rape Aggression Defense Education Model, or RAD. The police department hopes to empower women to defend themselves should the need arise.
The RAD class is a self-defense class for women specifically, and it is designed to teach women basic self-defense moves so that they can protect themselves in a situation where they might become victimized.
The most recent RAD course was attended by 10 women, from teenagers to a senior citizen.
It's free. The city provides that for citizens within the community.
Over the course of 6 two-hour classes, the women learned the basics of self-defense as well as some more elaborate moves.
The first class is really a classroom setting. We go over different ways that they can protect themselves while they're at home. We go over the laws. We go over sexual assaults, domestic violence, stalking, date rape encounters, in different ways that they can protect themselves, or if they have been or know someone who becomes a victim of those crimes. Then starting the second class, going all the way to the 6th class, we start to then introduce the actual physical moves.
Unfortunately, there are many situations in which a woman could find herself in danger.
A lot of things that we talk about during the class is if they're coming out of the mall, they're in a parking lot, maybe it's late at night, and if someone was to approach them, try and come up to them, grab them, then that would certainly be an incident where hopefully this would come in handy for them. If they were out jogging, walking, exercising, whether it be in the early morning or in the early evening hours, situation where someone could come out and possibly attack them. If they're in a domestic violence situation, they're living in a violent home and something is happening and they would need to protect themselves. If there was an intruder that was to break into their home and try to either physically or sexually assault them, if they were to become a victim of a date rape situation.
One of the first steps in protecting yourself is awareness. The RAD class teaches its students to be aware of their surroundings and the potential for danger.
Our goal is to teach them awareness so that they can hopefully get out, get help before a situation escalates to a physical altercation. And even then, the goal is still hopefully for them to get out of that situation as soon as they can, get to an exit and get help.
For example, if you're walking to your car in a public place and you sense something out of place or someone, go back into the building from which you came and get help.
If you have a cell phone available, then maybe you want to start already dialing 911 if you fear that there's going to be some sort of situation that could put you in a compromising position where you could become a victim.
The RAD class also teaches students how to use their voices to supplement the physical defense moves they are taught. Each time the students practice a move, they are taught to shout, "No."
No! We try and teach the women not to go into a panic mode. That's why we want them to use their voice commands. We want them to say no and back off rather loudly, because certainly assailants, predators, don't want to be caught. So anything that's going to draw attention to them and to other people hopefully is going to be enough for them to get out of the situation and unfortunately move on to somebody else that might not cause that type of scene. So we really want to get the woman to say no, back off, use verbal commands so that other people in the area will know that they need assistance and they need help.
Make no mistake, the RAD class doesn't train women on how to go 9 rounds with an attacker. There are no illusions about the fact that most of the time a man is going to be stronger than a woman. But what the class does teach is that by applying the stronger parts of a woman's body against a man's vulnerable locations, the woman can probably disable her attacker long enough to get out of a violent or unsafe situation.
I think the most important thing that I learned was it didn't matter if I was young or old, that I was a girl, and girls have particular areas where they have some strengths, and I learned how to use those parts of my body to protect myself.
Like if that happened to me, I try to talk them out of it. But if I can't, I use my elbows, my foot, my head. I'll stomp them on the toes and kick them other places.
The 6th and final class in the RAD course is the most challenging. In it, the students are given the opportunity to use what they've learned in a role-playing exercise.
The final class is what we call a simulation exercise. So we actually have aggressors that have equipment on them, and the students are given student gear, so they have protective gear for their heads, they have protective gear for their hands, elbows, and knees, and they actually get involved in situations where they are encountered by an aggressive person who may grab them, who may attack them, where they can actually use the moves that they've learned and feel what it would feel like to actually physically strike someone, physically kick someone.
I was scared. I left the house and I told my husband I was scared.
But though it may be nerve-wracking, what most women learn in the final class is that they can hold their own, at least in a simulation. And that knowledge may be just as important as the physical moves that they learn.
I think it's giving them a sense of empowerment that yes, I do have something that I can do. I don't have to be a victim, or that should I be in a situation where I could potentially be a victim, that now I have some tools that I could use that hopefully the situation won't escalate and I will walk away from it to see another day.
They gave us a lifelong gift. That's the way I look at it. It's a gift. Great gift. A gift of life.
For Marlborough Magazine, I'm Sophie Burke.
Thank
Thank you, Sophie. Now, any woman who is interested in taking the self-defense class can call the police department at 508-485-1212.
As summer approaches, many of us plan to spend our days recreationally outdoors at beaches, parks, and even in our own yards. This increase in time outdoors leads to an increase in sun exposure. This can give way to skin cancer, which annually affects more than 1 million people in the U.S. alone. We here at M8 have dug deep to provide you with helpful and healthful tips so you can make the best of your summer. Recently, we visited with Marlborough's own dermatologist, Dr. Yankowski, to get the lowdown on skin cancer.
There are actually 3 types of skin cancers. One is called a basal cell, the second type is called a squamous cell skin cancer, and the third type is melanoma, which is by far the most serious of all the 3. The first 2, the basal cell and squamous cells, start on the skin as small bumps and just grow and at some point start to bleed. They are actually the most common types of skin cancer. The melanoma is actually the skin cancer of moles, or the pigment cells of the skin. And it starts as a mole that starts to grow and change size, shape, or color, and it again is far the most serious kind of skin cancer.
Since the 1920s, when French designer Coco Chanel decreed that being tan was a fashion look, the skin cancer epidemic has risen.
Oh, it has definitely grown. This year we will see over 1 million skin cancers in the United States. Approximately 700,000 to 800,000 will be basal cell skin cancers. About 200,000 will be squamous cell skin cancers, and unfortunately we are seeing 100,000 melanomas this year in the United States. And this is a rate that has increased tremendously. In fact, the rate has tripled since 1920, and it actually has increased by 4% since last year. So we are seeing more and more melanomas. And I might add that at this increased incidence and with these figures, if we take a look at the whole United States population, at this point in time, 1 in 10 Americans will develop a skin cancer in their lifetime. And unfortunately, somewhere between 1 in 40 and 1 in 60 Americans will develop a melanoma in their lifetime if this current trend continues.
Just because you may be dark-skinned or work indoors doesn't mean you are not at risk for skin cancer.
It can affect everybody. It can affect the blonde, blue-eyed. It can affect someone with darker skin. Again, it can affect the indoor worker. It can affect the outdoor worker. Everybody is at risk for skin cancer.
Who gets skin cancer the most? Is there a certain group that, comes in with most skin cancer?
We see a lot of skin cancer in patients who have received a lot of sun exposure. There seems to be a direct relationship between the amount of sun exposure you receive in your lifetime and the incidence of skin cancer. That becomes a little complicated with melanoma, because if you do receive short outbursts of very strong sun, then that specifically increases your incidence of melanoma.
The first step to prevention is detection by doing monthly self-skin exams. We'll explain step by step how to conduct your own self-exam.
We recommend that you do a skin self-examination every month. Take a look at all of your spots, stand in a mirror, look at your back, have your wife or husband or significant other take a look, but look at your spots once a month so you know what spots you have, and you will, if something new develops, you will pick it up.
To do your own self-exam, you'll need the following items: a bright light, a full-length mirror, a hand mirror, 2 chairs or stools, and a blow dryer. The following is a list of steps to help you conduct your own self-exam. First, examine head and face using one or both mirrors. Next, use a blow dryer to inspect scalp. Check hands, including nails. In full-length mirror, examine elbows, arms, and underarms. Focus on the neck, chest, and torso. With your back to mirror, use hand mirror to inspect back of neck, shoulders, upper arms, back, buttocks, and legs. Sitting down, check legs and feet, including the soles, heels, and the toenails.
Skin cancers will start as small spots, and although you may not find it the first time you look, you'll find it the second or third time. It will be a new spot that will appear on your body. For the basal cells and squamous cells, it will be probably a skin-colored bump that will grow bigger, and it sometimes start to bleed or appear if it's not healing. For the melanomas, it'll be a brown spot, a black spot, a blue spot, and it will start to grow. It will enlarge in size. It will get irregular borders. It will start to have different shades of brown or black in it, and if you look, you will notice it. If you don't look, it will sit there and start to grow and potentially even spread internally eventually, especially for the melanomas. Skin cancers don't knock on your door and say, "Hey, I'm here, look at me." They don't usually bleed or itch or get painful until they've been there for quite some time and grow to quite some size. And in the case of melanoma, they don't start to bleed or do something to draw your attention to them until it's potentially too late.
Conducting your own self-exam is only the first step, so if you find anything questionable or are at high risk for skin cancer, it is very important to have a skin exam done by a dermatologist.
I think that people can do two things. One, they can check themselves to see if they have any types of spots. If they do, go to the doctor and do it today. Don't do it tomorrow or next week or next year, because it may be too late. And the second is to just be aware that the activities that they're doing today and tomorrow, if they involve the sun, they should take precautions to avoid getting sunburn, to limit the amount of time that they go into the sun, and again, use a sunscreen.
Since prevention is key, the following is a list of other precautions for you to take. Do not sunbathe. Avoid unnecessary exposure between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. These are the peak hours of harmful radiation. When outdoors, use sunscreen rated SPF 15 or higher. Apply sunscreens liberally, uniformly, and frequently. When exposed to sunlight, wear protective clothing such as long pants, long-sleeve shirts, broad-brimmed hats, and UV protective sunglasses. Stay away from artificial tanning devices. Teach children good sun protection habits at an early age. Adult skin cancers start with sun exposure and sun damage from childhood. It's important to protect your skin all year long, not just in the summertime. So, if after all that you still want to achieve that oh-so-desired dark tan, Dr. Yankowski shares with us the safest way to achieve it.
To those people who would really like to have a nice brown tan, I would recommend the self-tanners, the creams or the sprays. They seem to be safe. They do give you a nice tan. For people who would like to go out in the sun and get a little bit of the benefits of the sun, I would recommend going out before 10 in the morning and after 3 in the afternoon. I would recommend wearing a hat, wearing clothes as the weather permits, and most important of all, I would recommend that all people use a sunscreen. That they use a sunscreen that is a number 15 or higher SPF, which gives an indication of the protection from the UVB rays of the sun. But in addition, they do need to use one of the stronger UVA protectors.
For Marlborough Magazine, I'm April Gedorowski.
That will do it for this issue of Marlborough Magazine, our first of 2005. It was our year in review. We had a good time putting it together. We hope you enjoyed it also. And Susan Laufer will return next month, as will Sophie Burke, Mike Lawton, Dave Morin, April Gadorowski, all of those who make Marlborough Magazine what it is today. I'm Dan Ginden. See you next month.